All right, and now for our keynote speaker, Mark Caddick is a district engineer in the road maintenance division of Public Works for LA County. Will talk to us about what they're going to do to prepare for El Nino. Let's all welcome Mark.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for giving us the opportunity to come here tonight just to give a little bit of presentation about how we can all prepare for El Nino. We did bring some of our other representatives in the area. We have Superintendent Paul Funk from our road maintenance side. We have Superintendent Paul Malillo from our flood maintenance side, who takes care of all that, and plus Hu Yi, who's one of the assistant area engineers from our flood maintenance, who provides a lot of service to the Santa Clarita Valley. But just to start off, as you can see, you've heard in the news that El Nino, it's here, it's been coming. It's actually been here for about a year, okay, the conditions. Now, the one thing about the Santa Clarita Valley and LA County in general is we are prone to a lot of disasters. Those of you that have been here about 20 years, we saw the Northridge earthquake, okay? We get wildfires, we get windstorms, we get rainstorms, we get thunderstorms like a month ago up in the Leona Valley, Lake Hughes area. So we all have to prepare, and that's the communities around us, the individual people in our departments as well. We as a county, we have a lot of systems and we try to mitigate risks. On the flood side, we've been around. We had the 100th anniversary of the LA County Flood Control District this year, 100 years. And that started because of a lot of disasters that were around the turn of the century and the recognized need to create systems to kind of mitigate risk. You can see, we have an extensive system of dams, we have channels, we have spreading basins to try to mitigate risk. But the problem is we can't eliminate risk, okay? We get disasters, we can try to help you, we can try to prepare ourselves, and we do a pretty good job of doing that every year because we just don't know when the next disaster is going to happen. A month ago, we didn't know that a massive thunderstorm was going to hit the hills just north of Santa Clarita. But we prepare for it, we're ready for it. And this is just a few things just to go over about how us as the county, we try to work together with our communities to bring information to them about how they can better prepare themselves as well for mitigating wildfire risk come the winter season. That's typically the most frequent thing that we see is after wildfires getting mud flow. And that causes a lot of problems on private property. So we have staff that meet with communities, to go tell them how they can better help themselves and what we can do to help them. We also prepare our channels and our roadsides to, better take care of the floods that we know are going to arrive, whenever El Ninos and different storm events occur. So just briefly, what is El Nino? We've heard a lot in the papers about it, in the news. Like I said, it's been around for about a year. It's just we haven't seen the extra rain come yet. Now, I heard, we've had, I think, 5 El Ninos since 1997. That was a big one, I remember. Everybody was predicting it. It came right on schedule, and it really did happen, caused a lot of devastation in the mountains around here in the Santa Clarita Valley. Now, one of the things about El Nino is it's a cycle. We go through it, whether or not it's a weak, a moderate, a strong El Nino. Well, all the people are saying, all the predictors, this is a strong El Nino. Now, was it the strongest? Well, as of 2 days ago, it wasn't the strongest. It was 1997. Then I just read in the papers yesterday, guess what? This looks like now it's the strongest El Nino by like a half a degree if you go and measure the water off the Peru, okay? So basically, it's not one storm. That thunderstorm that happened a month ago, I'll leave that up to the weather predictors as whether or not that was El Nino or not. That was a massive thunderstorm. We get those every year. Maybe El Nino made it worse. I don't know. All I know is we've tried to prepare and try to be ready whenever something like that happens. Basically, things can happen. Okay, we can't be perfect in trying to mitigate every risk. We're going to get closures, okay, especially on mountain roads, things like that. When we're getting heavy flooding, there isn't going to be a way of keeping something like Lake Hughes Road open when it had the powerhouse fire a couple of years ago, and we know there's going to be mud flow. Those kinds of things are going to happen, but be prepared. Know where the risks are, know your community, know where the problems are going to occur. In our department, We have an extensive, every year, we prepare for storm events. We try to get ready for an earthquake. We just don't know when it's going to happen. So we try to prepare, have backup generators, have staff that know their roles and where to respond. But for storms, I mean, you could see, I mean, we have our dams. We go out every year. We have 14 dams in the county, okay, believe it or not. And we prepare by checking out, make sure the valves all work. That's a very important thing. We have spreading basins, and we go out there and we scarify the bottoms to make sure we can preserve the rainwater. We don't want it all going to the ocean. That's one of the primary roles of our department in the LA County Flood Control District is water conservation. And we go out and we go take care of our soft bottom channels, and we take care of all the vegetation and excess things that might cause it to not perform as designed. You know, our dams, you know, prepare, well, there aren't really any dams in the Santa Clarita Valley, but once you go in the LA Basin, that's where a lot of them provide a lot of the flood control protection between our department and the Army Corps of Engineers. Basically, again, we can help the communities. We know that things are going to happen, you know, in various locations. We can kind of predict in areas where there's been a wildfire where there might be mud flow. We pre-position heavy equipment, big loaders, backhoes. We have our trucks all at the ready. We have a lot of resources as the county. We're very big. As a department, we can pull resources, and we did that a month ago when the thunderstorm hit. That night, we were ordering extra equipment. We were bringing in resources for the next morning, and that night from other areas of the county so that we could go respond to that community. You know, one of the primary things I was talking about was capturing stormwater. You know, we're in a drought. We don't want the water just going out to the ocean. So as a department, we lead, I believe, the nation actually in water conservation and actually trying to keep the water, you know, in our county and going back into the aquifers. I think I read that 1/3 of the water in LA County is actually through recharge, okay? We actually, as a department, we put back in, I think it's 65 billion gallons of water back into the aquifers, okay, through our systems that we have of spreading basins and coming down from the channels, from the mountains and all the dams. And during like an El Nino season, like in 97, 98, that doubled. That was like 120 billion gallons of water. So that's a big effort, especially in a drought area like we're in right now, or a drought, well, we're impacted by drought right now, extended. You know, we need to conserve as much water as possible. And that's through efforts with all the different water agencies and with the Army Corps of Engineers and, you know, all of our other municipalities around that we all cooperate so we can go get all this precious commodity, you know, kept in the county. Now, what should you do? You know, as residents, basically, you know, stay informed. There's a lot of different ways to monitor, like when storms are going to come. This is a predicted El Nino. If you happen to live in a flood-prone area, know where your risks are, okay, in your community. If there's questions about it, you can contact us. We have a lot of people in our department that can provide advice to private property owners about if you believe there's might be like mud flow coming onto your property or you might get flooded. They can provide some advice to you. Stay alert. You know, there's different applications you can get if you have the internet. You can sign up for a lot of different resources that can tell you that there's a warning from the National Weather Service about a thunderstorm or a major storm event, or you know, basically if there's going to be an evacuation or something like that. You can sign up on different websites with the county so that you can be called, you can get a text, you can get an email, and then that would warn you of something impending. You know, how can you prepare? Well, you can sign on for Alert Los Angeles County, and you can, again, sign up for all those notifications. You can download our survival guide, okay, on the internet. If you don't have access, let me know. We can probably provide one of those to you. Interactive tools. Our department created a thing called the Works. If you have an iPhone or an Android, you can put that on. You see a problem, you can take a picture of it, you can send it in, okay? That works for unincorporated county. It also works for in the city areas if there's part of, like, let's say a flood control channel and you see that there may be a problem or you feel there's a need, then that would be addressed within our department because we are the flood control district, you know, for the county. Know your flood risk, okay? When you buy a home, and this is what unfortunately I've seen time and time again. I was up at a local assistance center a couple of weeks ago up in Lancaster area for all the people that were impacted by the thunderstorm a month ago. And it was unfortunate that some people did not know their risk. They did not know their flood risk. They bought a home, but they didn't really realize what they were getting themselves into. It's important to read the documents that you get when you buy your home to know if you're in a flood-prone area, if you're in a seismic study area, those types of things. They're very good information, and you should find out whether or not you're in a flood zone. Now, you might find out because you might be in a mandatory flood insurance location, and you might find that out as you try to purchase your homeowner's insurance. But it's, as it says at the bottom, most homeowners' insurance policies do not cover flooding. And that happened several times. It was very unfortunate with some people that happened to be in a location up in the mountains, which is not covered by the flood control district, and they didn't realize this going in, and they bought their home on a short sale, so nobody was there before them to tell them of all the unique things that happen on that property, and they got 4 feet of mud through their home. It was really, really unfortunate. So consider flood insurance options if you happen to be in an area that you might get flooding on your property. Prepare an emergency kit. I mean, it's a good thing to have around. Like I said, earthquakes, you just don't know when they're going to happen, but you got to be prepared. Keep food and water to last for several days. First aid kits, radios, medications. Medications are important. Okay, keep a stock. I saw during the 2004-2005 storm some people on the other side of San Francisco Canyon Road who happened to have to cross over the riverbed to get to their homes. They couldn't cross over for about 3, 4, 5 days because they happened to live on the other side. Now, some of them needed to get, let's say, hay for their horses, things like that, but there was no way for them to cross. So, I mean, these are things that when it's in the winter season and you happen to live in an area that's prone to that, you need to prepare and plan ahead. Keep tools and things like that available, know where they're at. Stay informed. I brought some brochures that they're back on the back table, and that has some different accesses to this information. Road closures. I really think our road closure website that we have for our department for the unincorporated county is just wonderful on that. If you want to be notified of, like, let's say if Bouquet, San Fran, Vasquez, Sierra, if there's a problem on it and it's closed for some reason, it'll show up. You can sign up for texts. It'll tell you, it'll send you an email. When a geographic area has a change in status for a road, it becomes closed, it becomes reopened. We're planning on closing it for some reason, for road construction. You can get that information. Sandbags tells you where to go get it, but basically for sandbags, you go to any county fire station and you go pick those up. They'll give you 25 right off the bat. Beach closures, maybe not that important up here. Weather conditions, it's very important that you know if you're in a flood-prone area if there's going to be a big storm coming. And tree safety, we have about 60,000 trees in the unincorporated county that we maintain as parkway trees. We go through, we trim them on a schedule. We just had high winds in the Santa Clarita Valley, I think it was, 2 days ago? Okay, that was going through. We lost 10 trees, total, which really for the size that we get of our inventory, that wasn't so bad when you get a super high wind event. But call our dispatch. We have a 24/7 dispatch. You can get a hold of somebody, they get the right people. Usually what they would do for this community is they would call one of our 2 superintendents and inform them of the problem. How can you get help? 211 for the county, and plus they have access to the disaster preparedness documentation for the county. During storm events, again, monitor the radio, monitor your emails if you signed up for those types of things. If you're in an area and we're talking about evacuation, that would normally be for an area that has had a recent fire burn, where you know that there's going to be mud flow. In this particular area right here, I don't believe there's been any recent ones. Over in Calgrove, there were off the old road. So that community, certain people know that during certain events, they might have to leave. But that's a relatively small amount of people over there. Stay out of flood control channels and riverbeds. That goes without saying. Don't cross flooded areas. If you saw the pictures from a month ago with up in Leona Valley and Lake Hughes, it happened, 3:30 in the afternoon. And what's happening then? People are starting to get off work and people are picking up their kids from school. Okay? So what happened? A lot of people saw the mud flowing across the road. They kept trying to drive. Regardless if they were in a Honda or they were in an F-250 four-wheel drive, they got stuck, they got buried, and their cars are trashed, they're totaled. If you're in a safe location and there's like a flash flood, stay where you're at if you're safe. Don't drive across stuff. That's how you can get yourself hurt, get killed. It happened in 2004, 2005, and it happened again up in Palmdale, with somebody with this last thunderstorm a month ago. So don't enter moving water. I mean, what the fire department has said, and the sheriff department, we were at a meeting last week, only 6 inches of flowing water can start shoving a car sideways. And you don't know how deep it is until your engine dies. And then you're out of luck. And then the fire department has to try to rescue you. And you don't want to put yourself in that situation. Stay away from steep slopes. We had a lot of slope failures in the Santa Clarita Valley in 0405. Normally what problems start cropping up is when it's been raining and the ground's saturated and you get one more big rainstorm. Then things start slipping and sliding. So stay aware of that kind of stuff. Be alert to road hazards. Resources. We have a website put up for the county, lacounty.gov El Nino. Gives you all kinds of links to information, so I don't need to go over that too much here. Reports problems, before they become big problems. If you see something that's a concern, call it in. You can use the Works app that we have for the county. You can call it into our dispatch. Either way is just fine, and then we'll take a look at it. And basically, any questions? And please take one of the brochures in the back, for reference on that.
Go ahead.
Yes.
As areas through our river, is it the county that ensures it is clear, or is it the city?
Well, it depends on where. There's different locations. Like we just completed a project our flood maintenance staff just did down on Santa Clara River, just from Sierra Highway, I think about half a mile in one direction. Buttressing up and fortifying the embankment. They just completed it, put up a lot of riprap, big rock. We take care of certain locations, and again, if you have a specific site in question, we could have Paul Melillo speak for that. But there are locations that are maintained by our flood control district. There's areas, I believe, that are maintained by the city of Santa Clarita. There's a study location that's right near here. Going towards closer to city or to Sierra Highway, where the city and the county are working together because there's going to be some kind of center built there, and they're trying to figure out, how can we improve the unimproved dirt channel through that section. So that's under study right now, with the city and county. So if you have a certain location, then Paul can answer that question, because there are certain sections that are maintained by others, and there's certain ones that are maintained by us that have been improved. Well, do you have a location in mind?
No, I was just thinking about where as we go through the city, as the river passes through the city. Who has the responsibility for maintaining those locations? In the river itself, in the riverbed itself, is it still divided between the city and the county?
Yeah, it's a good point. We live in an age of a lot of environmental regulations, and we do have to work closely with the Army Corps of Engineers, Federal Fish and Wildlife, and the California Fish and Wildlife regarding what we can and can't do while still maintaining the infrastructure that we built to try to mitigate the flood risk. And it's a challenge. It's going back and forth, and we negotiate with the agencies, trying to do what we can. And like Huyi said, we do what we can with the permits that we're able to obtain, and it's limited because we have to retain habitat, for the environment.
Yeah, I guess the best example of that around recently is Bouquet Canyon.
Yes, totally agree, and we thank Assemblyman Tom Lackey for getting Assembly Bill 353 through, and because that has helped us so that we can try to resolve some of the issues further up the canyon, up in the National Forest. And we're looking forward to hopefully resolving that in the coming future.
So I just want to extrapolate a little bit on Alan's question, just to understand it a little bit better, because there's a road called Creekside, and there's a river next to it, and then Ray Road has a river, and all of it there's a lot of trees and bushes and things like that in there, and maybe there's an environmental reason why we can't take those out, but if indeed there is big flooding, my fear would be that those trees break loose, bushes break loose, and they end up damming under a river, under a bridge, backing everything up into our community. And that's where my fear would be. I don't know if you've discussed that and understand this is a fear throughout Santa Clarita. What can we do something about? And if you can't do something about it, under whose authority can we get to do something about it?
Well, Paul, do you have any background on the particular bridge or the section channel he's talking about?
It's Ray Road. If you go south from Bouquet to the 14 freeway, there's a whole stretch there, not too many signals, but on the right there's a lot of trees in there. And then over at our big intersection, there's a creek side. There's another river that can go down there too, and that's filled with trees. The crows actually, I think, habitate that. I don't know if there's an environmental problem with that because of the crows, but there's a danger, I think, to this community that that's going to back up, dam up, and then flood us.
I'm not too familiar with that specific area. Paul might have more experience with that than me, but trees in general are not a problem during our flood control. When we're in a storm event, Paul and his crew do what we call storm patrol operations. They will actually go out middle of the night. They all get wet. They're in their pickup trucks, drive throughout all of LA County. Him and his crew will specifically be here for Santa Clarita Valley. They will go and check out areas. Any complaints or calls of downed trees or something near our facilities, we will handle, or we will talk to road and coordinate a response and handle. I think road's operation works similar. My biggest headache is actually not the trees, it's plugged catch basins, which has been a problem for us. And citizens are the best and the quickest to know when there's a problem, especially if you have that Works app and you could take a photo with the GPS coordinates and tell us where that plug intersection or catch basin is at. We can respond quicker to you and get out there and help you.
And when you talk about catch basins, I believe there's something like 80,000 catch basins that we as a department maintain, and those are done every year. We have those cleaned out every year to make sure that they have their full capacity in the catch basin, they're not plugged. So, I mean, Paul Funk, he goes up in all the different roads and he takes care of the culverts that pass the water from one side to the other to make sure that they're all clear before the storm season comes. So there's a lot of preparation that goes into maintaining our roadways and our storm drain system so that they're at peak efficiency before the rainy season comes.
Can you define exactly what a catch basin is, first of all? I mean, is it the grate next to the gutter?
Well, the way I kind of describe it is I didn't really know what it was, and my friends didn't know what they were back when I was in high school, because there's this hole in the curb and gutter that kind of seemed to go nowhere, and they'd pour the motor oil into it. Then after I graduated college and started work for our department, I'm going, stop doing that. Okay, bad, do not do that. That goes into, the catch basin is what is typically in the curb and gutter, and it's that hole. And it goes into a big box, then it goes into a pipe about this big. Then that goes into a storm drain that's in the street that's underground that you don't see. Then that goes down the street into a bigger drain. Then that goes down someplace and it ends up in a channel. And then that channel ends up into a river. And then it ends up in the ocean. And that's kind of what the flood control system kind of does, very simplistically. But you don't see most of the flood control system. You see the channels. You might see the dams if you go up one of the canyons. But most of the flood control system is underground. And it works efficiently. Paul Malolo's staff go out and inspect them, on a schedule to make sure underground that there's no separations, there's no problems, especially after an earthquake or something like that. They need to get in there. But the bottom line is you don't see most of it. But again, catch basins, people think those, I've heard them described as those things up in the canyons that take all the mud and everything. No, those are debris basins. Those we put in all over the Santa Clarita Valley to take the debris before it goes out into the streets, before it gets into the catch basins, before it gets into the storm drains. You want to keep all that debris out of that system to make sure it's still functioning. And then when those get a little bit of debris, I think it's 25%, when they get plugged or they get sediment in them to a certain point, then they start scheduling the removal of all the debris so that they're ready for the next storm to come. So,
I'm just wondering what can be done to keep that water from ending up in the ocean?
good question. Part of the charter of the LA County Flood Control District was water conservation. And that's why I was describing a little earlier. We have an extensive system of what we call spreading grounds. Now, I'm not sure. I don't think there's any in the Santa Clarita Valley, correct? Okay. So, because typically you have to have a spreading ground where you have upstream, you have a dam that can hold back the water, and then you can systematically release it. So after the storm is passed, or while the storm is happening, we'll take all the water from the, some of the channels, depending on how they're designed, or we'll release water from the dam, and we'll divert it out of the channel that would take it to the ocean, and we'll divert it into a spreading basin. And I had a couple of pictures up here earlier. I could go back if you'd like to see it. But basically, it's a big graded area, and we just make a lake. And then that lake subsides. It goes into the groundwater over the course of several days. You don't want it there too long because you don't want mosquitoes. Okay? So they have all this stuff timed from doing this for almost 100 years. They know exactly how much water to put in, how often to do it, and they use all that water that's captured up at the dams and in certain channels that we can divert off instead of flowing out to the ocean to go recharge the groundwater aquifers. And like I said, we have about, on an annual basis, our district and our county as a whole saves about 65 billion gallons of water and puts it back into the ground instead of letting it flow out to the ocean. And in a big storm year, they go on overdrive, and in 97, 98, and I kind of hope that we have another event like that, but just not all at once. I like rain just a little bit here and there, and then fill up the dams, let it out slow. I don't want it all at once. That's what causes damage. But in something like that, we get like 120 billion gallons of water put back into the groundwater aquifer, and that's important in the drought that we're in, that we can keep preserving that resource and not let it go out to the ocean.
So I didn't understand recharging the aquifers. You let it seep down into the ground, into the aquifers, but you can't actually direct it into the aquifers. I mean, there's no pipe that goes down to recharge it that way.
No, we don't. I don't believe we direct inject it, but Huyi is an expert on that.
We do two things. One is by gravity, and just let Mother Nature naturally soak that water into the ground. Which takes longer, but you let Mother Nature and the soil filter out a lot of the impurities as it goes down, and you get cleaner water as you go through. And it takes a while. The water you're pumping out of the groundwater today has been saved and filtered through soils through years and years and years, if not generations or 100 years before it gets pumped out again. The second thing we do is on the coast, what we call seawater barrier injection. We inject water, fresh water, directly into the aquifer to hold back seawater intrusion into our freshwater supply. And that's a very important component of us saving our freshwater aquifer supply, because constantly the seawater or the salty water wants to encroach more and more inland, especially the more we pump down our aquifer. So we have to protect it by creating injection well barriers along the coast, like Long Beach and other areas that we do that at.
So if we were to inject aquifers throughout the state, inject not just on seawater or at the seashores, but all over, would that replenish our aquifers to a higher degree than what you're just using gravity for?
In theory, yes, but you need the water first. I work at Hanson Dam, and the last 3 or 4 years, the basins have been, our spreading ground basins have been dry probably 9 or 10 months out of the year. It has been very wet. We have not been able to get enough rain to fill the current spreading grounds we have. We're hoping for a lot of rain this year, but like Mark said, not all at once.
Right, but if we had it all at once,
Yeah.
then we can inject it.
I still like...
And that's where,
Yeah.
by thinking, I'm not an engineer, but I'm worried that, okay, if we're depleting our aquifers, then why aren't we trying to inject into the aquifers on the other side when we get a lot of rain and rechannel it so that we can do that? Now, somebody has had to have thought about that already. This is not an original concept, I'm sure.
You can inject it deeper to the aquifers if you want. I personally am not in favor of that because of the energy cost it takes to do that.
But that's
second,
if it's a pipe, it's gravity.
Yes.
That's, you know,
Well,
I mean, do you have to
it's
pump
under
it
pressure.
down?
Our aquifers are actually under a clay line.
Oh, you mean
aquifers.
underneath this?
Underneath this, under pressure.
Outward? Oh,
Yes, so
okay.
you have to
I see.
inject it. And second is that Mother Nature actually does a pretty good job of filtering the water out before it gets to the aquifer.
Unless it's going into Chiquita landfill and you're taking the water underneath that.
Yeah. Now I'm going to stay away from that hot button topic. But I think what you want to know is how can we conserve more water into our aquifer. I think a potential game changer that may be coming soon because of the drought situation is us talking more closely to City of LA, Bureau of Sanitation, and other sanitation districts, and talking about using reclaimed water that meets practically drinking water standard. And instead of putting that out to the ocean, let's put it into our spreading grounds. So I think that could be a big game changer for aquifer recharge.
And I just have one other question that's just for Mark or Alan, but here in Santa Clarita, Alan, what are the responsibilities of the city in terms of directing our water flow? And maybe you've said that already, Mark, I don't know. But what does the city do? I mean, you know, we live in a community, some of us in the same area, where I went on a walk the other day to see how our drainage is going to be. And it looks pretty good, but there are some areas that if one got plugged up, then we're all going to get flooded. So whose responsibility is that? And if it is the city, then should we in the city have groups of people going around that will be looking at these problems, yes, in our raincoats in the middle of the night, just to make sure that these places are not getting plugged up? Is that city responsibility or is that county responsibility?
I can answer that because I work with some of the guys out here at the city. Worked close with the city when they first incorporated because they didn't have anybody. They had pickup trucks, so they came to us, and we still did the maintenance of the streets and the drains and for them to get plugged. And they have their own crews now, and they're trained. And matter of fact, one of the inspectors was in my office yesterday, and they go out and they do pretty much the same way we do it. They go through and inspect the drains ahead of time. They have code enforcement that checks the catch basins to make sure that people aren't dumping things in there to plug them up ahead of time. And you'll see what Paul knows what the Vector trucks, they suck them out. Yeah,
in our community.
That's what they're doing. They're getting them all ready as much as they can ahead of time. So the city does do about the same thing.
From the standpoint of stormwater, we have our stormwater assessment district. The city manager that's in charge of that is Travis Lang, and yes, they take care of the storm drains and make sure they're clear. And also, they talked about putting the barriers in front of the storm drains to keep stuff from getting in there. It's not supposed to. That also pays for the street sweeping so that storm runoff doesn't accumulate more things from the ground. So from that standpoint, it is the city. It's the stormwater assessment district Then from the standpoint of wastewater, it's the Santa Clarita Valley Sanitation District, of which is a combination of the city and the county in the board of directors. And right now, out of our sanitation district plants, we discharge 20 million gallons a day into the river and that's basically what's going on with it today. So there, yes, it's partly the city, partly the county.
But I'm still worried that, in somewhere in our community, I think we're going to get flooded. And the question will then be, what should we have looked for? Since I practice preventively, what could we have looked for to keep the flooding from occurring? And especially when it's been dry, there's going to be a lot of debris. What should the citizens, how should the city go about saying, okay, let's make sure we have, we always know where the exit is for fires and things like that. Let's know where the water drains, and if we see something unusual, let's go after that and be proactive in trying to stop somebody from losing their home.
Well, if you know of any area that's that way, then Travis Lang is the guy to call. Unfortunately,
Do you have a number?
259 City.
259 City. Is it Travis Lane or Lang?
Okay. Yeah, it must be a cable. Yeah. Anyway, there it is. Anyway, yes, that's true. I just remember, some of us remember living here right at the beginning of, right before the 70s, in like 1969, when the river, at that time called a wash, was filled bank to bank, and the Camp Plenty Bridge washed out, and the bridge over Sierra Highway sunk. So we know that there is a possibility, and it'd be very interesting if El Nino creates as much water as it did at that time. We'll have to see just how well all that engineering down the banks of the river is.
Well, and also, as the county, I mean, we're prepared. We have the staff. We have the expertise that when things happen, we take action. For instance, in 97, 98, I was here, and I remember over at Bouquet, the bridge right there, the abutment started, there was a hole that started next to the abutment, and we were in there immediately. The fire department were our partners in this whole effort, and we had dozers down there redirecting and immediately putting in riprap and shoring up the bridge. We just finished up, I think, last year up at Fitch on Mint Canyon Channel. We just put in a new bridge so that the people on the other side of Fitch and, Fitch and Arlene were the two ways in to that area. So the county, we just completed about $1 million bridge about a year ago over there. And again, we talked about the buttressing up of the embankment riprap along Santa Clara River down here by Sierra Highway. So we try to find locations where, we can improve the system that we have. And again, we can try to mitigate things as best we can, but no system's perfect. And, there are going to be things like in El Nino that are still going to happen, and we're there ready to go. Okay, well, thank you.